Hi friends, in this video we're going to talk about how to generate automated reports using Python and Jinja HTML templates. So using Jinja templates, we can create HTML reports which are highly interactive and rich in styling. This is an example report generated using Jinja and Python. You can see we generated HTML table with some data in it. We have generated some list items and we have even generated an interactive plot because it's HTML, right? In HTML, you can have interactivity using JavaScript and CSS. So since we are generating HTML reports, these are rich in styling and interactivity. Alright, let's get to know what is a Jinja template. One easy explanation of a Jinja template is basically it is a string which has placeholder variables where you can inject data into that variables. For example, I've got a small Jinja template which is actually a birthday invitation. So here you have placeholders with variable names, and using Python you can actually inject data into these variables. So this is a Jinja template, and using Python I can inject data into this Jinja template and I can create output something like this. So I can substitute values into these Jinja variables and I can create output string something like this. So this is the Jinja syntax. For substituting variable names, you have to write double curly brackets and write the variable name here. Not only substituting data into variables, in Jinja templates, you can even do for loops. Let's see an example here. Suppose I got a Python list top items. So this is a Python variable which has list of strings. I need to render this list of strings in a Jinja template. So let's say I have a Jinja template something like this. So I can declare a for loop in a Jinja template. So here I'm writing for item in top items. Since the variable name is top items, I'm iterating through these top items just like a Python. And for each item, I'm doing something here. I'm just rendering the item. So the output would be something like this: top performing items, item 2, item 3, item 7. So this way you can even use for loops in Jinja templates. Alright, now let's apply the same logic to a HTML Jinja template. That means the Jinja template is basically just a HTML script with Jinja variables and control statements. So here we have reproduced the same example but inside HTML tags. So I'm declaring the top performing items is a h2 tag, that means a heading tag, and I'm giving a unordered list, and inside that unordered list I'm rendering each item as a list item. So the output would be something like this: top performing items, and you will get an unordered list with list items. So it's basically a HTML. So the output would be something like this. So we are getting styled output because we are using HTML tags. Alright, we have seen how Jinja can be used. Now let's see how can we implement it in Python. To do Jinja templates in Python, you need to install the Jinja module. So I'm going to write python -m pip install jinja2. So now we are installing the Jinja2 Python module. It's installed in my PC now. Alright, in a Python code, let's try to implement Jinja templating. First, let's try to take a string which is a Jinja template. So now I want to substitute values into this Jinja template. First, you create a template object. So first you write import jinja2 in your Python code and create an environment jinja2.environment, and since you are using Jinja from a Python string, you can write loader equal to jinja2.baseloader, and from string the template string which you have declared just now. So from the template string you have created a Jinja template object, and now just render a dictionary with the variables in this Jinja template object. For example, I have created a variable called context, and it's a dictionary which has the variable names name, age, and city. And now I'm just rendering this dictionary in the template using template.render the context, and then the output would be the rendered string output. It's that simple to use Jinja in Python. Let's try to implement this now. I'm going to take a blank folder and I'm going to open it with VS Code. Let's get a new Python file. I'll just name it index.py. First, let's try to import Jinja2. So I'm going to write import Jinja2. Let's try to declare our Jinja template string. And now I'm creating a Jinja template object using jinja2.environment, and the loader would be a jinja2 base loader because my template is just a Python string. And I'm saying from string this template string which you have created now. So the data to be supplied in the placeholder variables can be provided as a dictionary. For example, I have created this variable called context, and now the output would be something like render text equal to template.render of the context. Let's try to see what the output would be. I'm going to print that output. So I'm going to write print render text. Now let's try to run this example, and here we got the output. The variables of the context are being substituted in our output string. So it's that simple to use Jinja. Alright, now instead of deriving the template from a string, let's try to derive the template from an input file. Let's call it the template file. Let's get a new folder here and I'll name it templates, and let's try to create a template here. So I'm going to write it biotemplate.txt, and let's try to copy this text in the template file. So now I got my template file ready. Now let's try to remove this template string, and now let's try to load the template from a file. So this is how you would load the template from a text file actually. So this time I'm going to write jinja2.environment, and we are going to use the loader as a file system loader because we are going to load the template from our folder, and the folder would be /templates because the template is present in the templates folder. So I'm going to write ./templates, or you can use the absolute URL of the folder, and I'm telling get template biotemplate.html. And here we have used one more thing called auto escape. So I'm telling auto escape equal to jinja2.select auto escape. So what this does is it enables HTML escaping. So in the variables being substituted, you can give only strings or numbers, you can't give HTML. So you can't inject HTML using variables if you set this auto escape equal to select auto escape. So this is good for security purposes. Of course, in our example, it's not required, you can even remove this. So that's it. I'm loading my template biotemplate.txt. I'm providing a context to substitute the variables, and I'm rendering it. Now let's try to run this file, and you got the output. You can see the output is actually text. Now you can use this text and create a text file out of it. Let's try to do that now. So I'm just taking the output, which is a rendered text, and creating a text file called bio.txt and just writing that stuff into that file. So let's try to run this now. And here in the bio.txt, I got the output. So effectively what we did was we used a template which has variable placeholders in it and create an output which has the data in it. So this is the basis of today's discussion. We're going to use some report templates where you have the variable name placeholders and for loops or if statements, and you will generate reports out of it. Alright, let's try to see another fun example using Jinja. So here in the templates folder, I've got a file called invitetemplate.txt. So it's just a simple message to invite some guests to an event. So we have some placeholders here, the recipient name, the event date string, venue string, and the sender name. Now I can use a Python script to actually generate invites for multiple people from this single template. So let's see how we can do that. First, you're going to import Jinja2 and load the template from the file system. So I'm going to write Jinja2 environment file system loader invite template.txt, and then I'm going to create a context object which has the variable data. So this template has recipient name, event date string, venue string, and the sender name. So we have the data in this context now. I've kept the recipient name as blank because I'm going to use a list of recipients and render the template. Let's say these are the recipients. So I have a list of guests names for each of which I'm going to create an invite. Now let's write a for loop and render the template for each guest. So I'm going to write for g in guests, and I need to set the template context data for the recipient name. So I'm going to write template context of recipient name is the guest, and then render the template and save the template. So I'm going to save the templates in a folder called invites. I've created already the invites folder here. So I'm going to write invites / the guest name.txt. So I'm going to create a txt file for each guest name and write the invite output data there. So that's how I'm going to create invite for each guest from a single template. Alright, let's try to save this and run this. And here you got invite for each guest. So this way, using Python, I've used a single Jinja template and I've created multiple outputs. So the same strategy can be used to create reports. You can have a single report template, and based on that you can create periodic reports like daily reports, weekly reports, etc. Alright, till now we have used text-based templates. Now let's try to use some HTML templates. Alright, to demonstrate HTML reports, I've got a simple example here. We are going to generate a simple dummy sales report here. So this is our template. So in our templates folder, I've created a HTML template file called sales report template. So it's just a HTML file which has some style tags, and inside the body we have something like a table and a list items, and we got image. Let's try to study this template now. We got a placeholder saying report for the report date string. So this we need to supply in our Python script. And in the body we have an image for the logo actually. So we will render images as base 64 because that way you don't need to depend on external files. So in HTML, if you write something like this, src data image png base 64, and if you write the base 64 image here, the image data would be present in HTML itself. You don't need to link to another image. So this way your report would be a standalone and it will not be dependent on other files for images. This way when you're shipping your HTML file, you don't need to ship the image files because the image is embedded in the HTML. So the image data would be populated in this logo image variable. And again, for the heading, we are substituting the report date. And in the table, we are given the headings serial number, item name, cost per unit, unit sold, and revenue. In the table body, we will render each row from this list of objects called sales table rows. And this should have attributes called serial number, name, cost per unit, number of units, and revenue. So for each sales table object, we will create a table row. So that's why we are using jinja for loop for item in sales table rows, and for each item which is an object, we are rendering a table row here. So this way we are populating data into a table from a list of objects in Python. The same strategy is being used here. We are creating an unordered list here, and for each item in top items rows, so there will be a list of objects called top items rows in our Python script, and we are injecting that into Jinja, and for each top item rows object which is item, I am rendering a list object. So each item would be rendered as a HTML list object here. And then for the revenue bar chart, the same strategy is used. We are rendering an image, and the base 64 data of the image would be actually present in the variable sales bar chart image. So this way I got a template for the report, and the variables of the report are basically Jinja placeholders. So when I inject data into this template, I can generate a HTML report. So we can use a scenario something like this for generating daily reports, weekly reports, monthly reports, etc. Now let's try to create a Python script where we can inject data into this HTML report. So let's go to our Python script index.py. I'm importing Jinja tool. So first things first, we got to load the template. So I've loaded the template from the file system loader, the templates folder, and the name of the template is sales report template.html because the template is sales report template.html here. And now I need to prepare some data, right? So in our template, we have a variable called report date string. So I'm going to generate a string for today in this format. So I will create a variable called today string so that I can use this variable for the report date string variable. And then in our template, we have something called sales table rows. So I've created an empty list called sales table rows, and I've generated some random data, and I've ensured that there are attributes which are required to be rendered in the HTML. So I need attributes like serial number, name, cost per units, number of units, revenue. So I've created random data with these attributes. So now I got the sales table rows with the required objects that can be rendered in the HTML. And then the next object is top items rows, which is also a list of objects, and each object is just a string actually. So I'm rendering the string here. So from these sales table rows, I'm sorting them by revenue and getting the names of the top three. So this code does that actually. So in the top items, I got a list of strings which are top three. So till now we have generated the data which is the date string, sales table rows, and top items. Now let's talk about the images. So we are going to load the logo image, and we are also going to load the revenue bar chart image, sales bar chart image. So how am I going to do that? I got the logo.png present in my templates folder. So using this PNG image, I need to create a base 64 string out of it. So I'm going to write with open templates / logo.png read bytes, and then I'm going to say base 64 encode of reading this file object and then decoding it as UTF-8 and giving that to a variable called logo image. And now we are going to use this to render the image in the Jinja variable. So this is how you can actually load images in your Jinja templates as base 64 strings. So now to create the bar chart image, I'm using the matplotlib Python library. So matplotlib can be used to create charts in Python. If you don't know about matplotlib, I've already made a video series on that, and I will leave the link of that series in the description. Ultimately what I'm doing here is I'm creating a plot here and saving that plot, which is a figure object, as an image bytes. and then I'm using that bytes to again create base64 encoded image string. So now I've created the image string from a file and from a matplotlib figure. So now I got all my variables set up. So basically, as a step 2, I have created the data. The step 1 was loading the template. The step 2 is creating the data. And once my data is created, I can create the context object. So I will use the same Jinja template variable names here: report date string, sales table rows, top items rows, sales bar chart image, logo image, and assign the variables here. Now I got all the values ready in the context object. The next step is really simple: render the context in the template object. So template.render context, and then you will get the text, which is the report. So now you need to just save the report. So now we got the report text, which is the report content. Now just you need to save it. So I'm saving it to a folder called reports sales report.html, and then I'm just writing it to the sales report.html. So that's it. As a step 1, we created a Jinja template object from a template file. In the step 2, we have fetched all the data or created all the data for the report, and then created a context object so that it can be injected into the Jinja template. And then the next step, step 3, is to render the context in the Jinja template and get the output text. And the last step is just to save the text as the required report file. So if you're doing something like daily reports, you can just write sales report underscore the date, something like sales report underscore the date string. We already have the date string, today's string, so I'm going to use that here, today's string. So now the report would be sales report 19th September, and tomorrow it would be sales report 20th September, and so on. So you can generate daily reports very simply like this. Alright, let's try to run our example now. So in the reports folder, we got sales report.html. So let's try to open the report. So I'm going to open the report sales report.html, and the report is basically a HTML file which has HTML content, which is a table, unordered list, and image. You can see the image is loaded standalone using base64 content of the image, and the same way bar chart is also loaded here. Now let's try to see the output text actually. So I'm going to right click here, view page source, and here you can see report for 19th September, which is the substituted variable, and the image source data png base64, and this is all the base64 content of the image, which is rendered in the Jinja template variable, and each row is being rendered using Jinja for loop here. In the same way, each list item is also rendered using Jinja for loop, and the revenue bar chart image, which is generated from matplotlib, is also rendered as a base64 image string here. So we have a standalone report file which is independent. It doesn't even depend on external images because the images are also embedded in the image tag. So now you can very easily distribute this HTML file to others. So the people can open this in their browser and see the reports. Alright, now let's take this report template a little bit further, and let's try to inject Bootstrap CSS into this so that we can demo the use of external libraries in our report templates. So in the head, I'm gonna inject the Bootstrap CSS here. So Bootstrap is a very famous CSS styling framework. So in the template, I have linked to the Bootstrap CSS, and in the body, I have used some CSS classes, something like table, table stripe, table border. These are CSS classes of Bootstrap. So using external CSS libraries, I'm actually adding styles to my HTML very easily. So now we have modified a template to accommodate Bootstrap CSS and Bootstrap JS, and I have given some standard Bootstrap classes so that I can easily add additional styling to my templates. So let's try to run our script again. So I'm going to save this index.py and run this again, and the sales report is again generated. Let's try to reload this page, and now you can see the page is styled using Bootstrap CSS, and with very less effort using external CSS frameworks, I can easily add styling to my reports. Now the report looks more styled using Bootstrap. But remember, now your output template is not standalone. It depends on this URL for fetching the CSS, and it depends on this URL for fetching the JavaScript file. So if you want this report output to be truly standalone, and you don't want linking to other files so that you can easily distribute this file to places where there is also no internet, how can you solve this problem? So in our Python script itself, we can fetch the CSS and JavaScript files using the request module of Python. So I've written request.get the URL of the CSS file .text and request.get the URL of the JavaScript file .text. And now I have the whole JavaScript and CSS files content in my jinja variable. Now let's try to render the CSS and JavaScript from jinja instead of linking it to external files. So CSS can be rendered using the style tag. So I'm going to write style, the bootstrap CSS variable which I have generated in the index.py file. Let's try to comment out this CSS from external link. Now we are rendering the CSS from jinja, and the same way let's try to comment out the script tag, and let's try to render the script from jinja. So here in the script tag you can write the variable bootstrap.js. So now the JavaScript content and the CSS content is actually being rendered from the Python script. So now your output report would be completely independent of internet, and all the data would be present in the file, and you can distribute this file independently to your stakeholders. But when you run the script, we are injecting CSS and JavaScript into your output report. And if you remember, in the jinja environment, we are telling auto escape equal to select auto escape, which actually enables auto escaping for HTML. So I'm going to write here auto escape equal to false, so that I will allow injection of JavaScript and CSS into my HTML file. So I'm going to save this now and then run this, and now our report is generated. And let's try to see the output report generated here. I'm going to reload the output file, and I'm not seeing any changes. The output is generated. Now let's try to view the page source here. And here in the page source, I have rendered the whole CSS file as a style tag. Also, I have rendered the whole JavaScript file as the script tag. And for this reason, my file is 382 KB, which is a bit more size. If you use external linking, the file would be very less in size. So be cautious while you use technique like this to render the whole JavaScript and CSS into your output files. Your output files might be bulky. So use this technique of injecting the JavaScript and CSS into your templates only if you know that you don't have internet access. If you have internet access, you can just link the CSS and JavaScript from external files and your report would be lightweight. Alright, we have covered how to use Jinja templates for HTML reports, how to use external libraries like Bootstrap to easily style your reports. Now one more thing is pending, which is interactivity. Since we are using HTML pages, we can easily add interactivity to our pages. Let's try to see this bar chart. This bar chart is basically just an image, right? Now instead of rendering an image, we can use Plotly.js JavaScript library to actually render an interactive bar chart here. Let's try to do that now. So in our sales report template, let's try to insert a script for fetching Plotly.js. So Plotly.js is a JavaScript library using which you can create interactive graphs in your HTML pages. So I've imported the Plotly library using the script tag in my template. So the revenue bar chart is actually an image, right? So let's try to comment out this image, and let's try to create a div called revenue bar chart, and then I'm creating a script tag where I'm actually initializing a data object, and for each sales table row object I'm inserting data into this data JavaScript object, and then using Plotly to create a plot in this div. So this is basically Plotly.js. So ultimately what we are doing is we have created a div, and in the div we are actually using Plotly.js to insert an interactive bar chart. So this is basically JavaScript, and the data for JavaScript is being supplied using Jinja templating. So let's try to save this now, and in our index.py we don't need this sales bar chart image because we are actually rendering the image in the front end, so you don't need to send this image now. And we are also not injecting JavaScript and CSS here. We have commented out those, so we don't need to render these variables also. So now let's try to save this, and now let's try to run our script, and now let's try to reload our output, and here we got the revenue bar chart, and this is an interactive bar chart generated by Plotly.js. So I'm able to interact with this bar chart now. I'm able to even zoom in and zoom out, and all those standard Plotly.js features are present in this report template. And you can distribute this report template to your stakeholders, and they can also interact with this report. So this way, using Jinja templates in HTML and Python, you can actually create HTML reports which have rich styling, and then we can also add interactivity to our reports using JavaScript. So that's it, guys. This is how you can use Jinja templates for generating HTML reports. You know, Jinja templates are used in web frameworks like Flask. I've already created a playlist on Flask web development in Python. I will leave the link of that playlist in the description. Till now we have seen how to do variable substitution and for loops in Jinja templates. You can even have template inheritance, macros in Jinja templates. I have covered that in this playlist. So if you want to know about how to do template inheritance, template splitting, and macros in Jinja templates, you can go to this playlist. You can see I've created a blog post with all the instructions, examples, the source code for each scenario in this blog post. So please be sure to check out the link of this blog post in the description of this video. I've also given the links to the official documentation so that you can do further reading. Please ask questions or post your valuable feedback in the comment section. So that's it guys. Hope you like this video. Thank you for watching. Peace.